Hello, my name is Bob Matthews and I am editor of a website for guitar players and for people that want to be guitar players called Learn Guitar Quick. That's learn-guitar-quick.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just go right to the description box and click on us. I'm going to talk today about music fundamentals. If you're just starting out as a guitar player, one of your first questions is going to be, where do I start? Of course, we all think of physical skills. Physical skills are important. How do we hold the guitar? Where do we put our left hand? How do we properly fret notes and chords, and how do we strum or pick with the right hand? How do we coordinate those two hands? Of course, physical skills are important. That's part of learning your instrument, and you will need to practice those. But as people are anxious to play that guitar and get faster and faster, that's guitarists tend to be obsessed with getting faster, with speed. Maybe they start to ignore some of the basic building blocks of music, some of music theory. So today I'd like to talk about some of the terms, basic concepts, because as you sit down with your guitar teacher, you want to communicate intelligently. You're going to have to know the terms or with fellow musicians. You have to understand the basic concepts, especially if you plan to compose later. So let's get right into it. First of all, what is a half step? A half step is a musical distance between two notes that are adjacent to each other in the scale. So on a guitar, it's a distance of one fret. So if you're on the same string and you move up or down one fret, that is a half step. On a piano, if you move to the key, from one key to the key next to it, that is a distance of a half step. Mathematically, scientifically, it's a distance of the 12th root of 2. So if you take any note and multiply its frequency or its pitch times the 12th root of 2, you get the note next to it. And just as a quick explanation here, the 2 comes from the fact that an octave is doubling a frequency. So if I go from an A, which vibrates at 400, in a particular A that vibrates at 440 times a second, 440 hertz, and I go up to the A above it, it'll be 880 hertz, or it'll vibrate at twice as much. So octaves are a factor of 2 apart in frequency. In between each note in an octave, in a total chromatic scale, there are 12 steps. We'll talk about that later. So that's where this 12th root of 2, it's a number that I have to multiply times itself 12 times to double that octave. Alright, so for some of you that made sense, and for some of you it was just plain confusing. To be a guitar player, you do not have to know that. In fact, most guitar players don't know that. That just threw that in as a point of interest. What's a whole step? It's simply 2 half steps. Alright, so it's 2 frets on the guitar, 2 keys on a piano keyboard, and it's 2 times this mystical 12th root of 2 number. So that's what a whole step. When we move up a half step, that's called a sharp. And we move, so on a guitar, that's equivalent to moving up 1 fret. Okay, so if we're at on the note F and we move up a half step, we're going to go to F sharp. If we're on G and we go down a half step, or down 1 fret, we're going to go to G flat. So flatting a note means subtracting a half step or bringing it down a half step. Alright, so that brings us to a discussion of the musical alphabet. What is that musical alphabet? It's just a way of naming things, so that when we talk about a specific note, we don't have to talk about your instrument and say it's on the 5th fret on that 3rd string, or on the piano it's in that group of 3 keys and that next to that middle black one on the left of it. That's just too hard. And plus, what do you do for a vocalist? You can't point and say it's going to be on this vocal chord or something. We have to have names so we can talk about these musical notes. The musical alphabet's based on the first 7 letters, so it's A through G, and each one of these notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, is called a natural note. A natural note means it doesn't have a sharp or a flat. Okay, no sharps or flats, so just the plain letter itself, that's called a natural note. Okay, if we add the sharps and flats in, we get a total of 12 notes, as I talked about before, and the whole sequence looks like this. It's A sharp or B flat, B, C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, E, F sharp or G flat, G, and G sharp or A flat. So you notice in here these oars. These oars tell me that this A sharp and B flat are equivalent in terms of their sound or their pitch. So if I were to play an A sharp for you, and then I were to play a B flat for you, you would hear exactly the same note. The reason they have different names, two different names, is because music theory demands it. Just in order to keep certain things consistent when you're talking about things in music theory, sometimes you would call it, it's correct to call it A sharp, sometimes it's correct to call it a B flat, for instance. So a simple example is if I am counting up the scale, or moving up the scale, I would say I'm going to go from A to A sharp, to B to C sharp, to D, etc. Whereas if I'm moving down that scale, okay, I'm going to go from G to G flat, to F to E flat. So I use sharps on the way up, flats on the way down, for instance. Okay, right now you just have to know that there are half steps in between these. And interestingly enough, if you look at B and C, E and F on here, B and C, there's no sharps or flats between it. E and F, same thing, there's no sharps or flats between it. These are the only two whole notes, or natural notes, that have a half step between them, or have no sharps or flats between them. So it has a smaller interval. And we'll find later when we talk about the major scale that it's this fact that there's a half step interval here and a half step interval here, and in their placement, which describes the configuration of a major scale. So kind of the definition of where these are, these half steps, where they fall, defines a major scale. And it's kind of confusing now, but we'll talk about that later and it'll make sense. Alright, so in summary, what do we talk about today? Whole and half steps. Half step is the distance of one fret or one note on a piano, or from one chromatic note to the next. A whole step is just two half steps, just as you'd suspect. Alright, accidentals are what we call sharps and flat. That's the name for sharps and flats. And they're a half step. A sharp is a half step up, flat is a half step down. Musical alphabet is the first 7 letters of the alphabet. It's just a naming convention. Okay, just a way for us to talk about notes. So hope you've learned a lot today. Come and visit us at learnguitarquick.com. So our website, as I said before, we can take a quick look. This is a website for guitarists, so there's a lot of articles. There's some products for sale, of course, and got some videos on here. Fretboard basics. Here's some products. We've got some videos on here. There's a Steve Ray Vaughan video. Just come and check it out. Like I said, just click in that description box. Also, follow us on Twitter. I'm on twitter.com at guitarbob. 3 B's in Bob, B-O-B-B. Alright, Guitar Bob. You can see there's Twitter. Alright. So there you go. Come and visit us, alright? Thank you.